Recording in progress.
We were speaking about that even though the Oid Ein Sof is very much concealed, and the avoida of our avoida is to take this Oir that's concealed, this light that's concealed, and elevate it and reveal it. So in Perek Yudalad, Ois Yudalad of the Hemshech, the Frierdiker Rebbe speaks about that why and how this is possible to be revealed, because the Oir Ein Sof comes down to the lowest level. It gives life, it gives vitality, it gives existence to everything me'ayin liyesh, and it comes down in the furthest, lowest levels. That's the part that we quoted from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. Now we're holding on page Lamed Beis, on line 13, just after quoting the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer. So now he's going to explain the juxtaposition and the association from Ois Yud Gimel in the Maimer to Ois Yud Daled, which we're going to elaborate. Line 13, page Lamed Beis. Behind this means Perek Yud Gimel Mavoyer in the chapter 13 of the Maimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's explained how the light comes down in multiple constrictions, concealments, and coverings. The Perek Yud Daled Mavoyer K'tzei in the 14th chapter, it's explained the opposite extreme. How the light is drawn down and shines everywhere, and in every place that's drawn down, even in the lowest most place, it is revealed. Like it's emphasized in the pasuk that brings down the beginning of the Maimer, you give life to all. That it says you, meaning in second person. That means Ata shows on revelation, because right in front of me, not him. Him could be anywhere. Him could be across the world. Ata, you're facing it. That shows on revelation. So when it says Va'ata mechayes kulam, that means the life of the Eibishter that comes down in all entities is in a way of Ata. It's in our presence. It's right in front of us. Like the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in the Maimer, the godly light that gives life and brings the worlds into being does not become affected by and does not become changed whatsoever. Just the fact there could be a change in the light through being enclosed in the worlds. When do we find? How can there be a case where being enclosed in the world can cause a change? So that's not the light of the level of Oir, of the Oir Ein Sof, and so on. Only the light that is in the level of koyach, that's a power. A power can be changed, as he will explain soon, the differences between koyach and Oir. But in the light that gives life, there's no change and there's no effect on the light whatsoever. So the Rebbe elaborates now on this concept. This will be understood according to what it's known concerning the three expressions: light, life, and power and energy. Which is Admar Azok Betanya. Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya that these three expressions are three levels. Like the Middle Rebbe explains in Imre Bina, top of page Lamed Gimel down. The Kvayt is Admar Shabbos to say Hemshach Tafresh Ayin Beis, and the Rebbe Rashab explains in Tafresh Ayin Beis the Koyach who nivdom em koyroi, that a power, when you use the term koyach, it's separated from its source. We mentioned this in the previous mind, but even though we didn't learn it inside, I said it outside. Let's say a person throws something, they're throwing a ball. The power, the energy is leaving their hand and moving the ball forward against the nature of falling, against gravity, and so on. So this moving forward, this idea is disconnected from the person. And therefore, therefore, the way koyach is in a way that's concealed. As opposed to the light and also the life force, they are cleaving to their source. They are connected to the source. The very nature of light, and in a similar vein, life, is that it always has to be connected to its source. Light, you cannot disconnect it from the luminary. You cannot, if you block the light from the sun, the light stops shining. The same thing with the life force. Let's say the neshama is mechaya the guf. The chayis of the neshama in the guf is a ha'ara of the neshama itself, and that needs to be constantly in a state where it's recognizable and connected to its source. As it says, Shalachein Haim Bebchinas Gili, because they are connected to their source, that's why they're in a state of revelation. Ella, the difference between them is, if both of them are revelation, Oyer and Chayis is revelation, and Oyer and Chayis are both connected, but Koyach is not connected and therefore not revealed. So what's the difference between Oyer and Chayis? But the light is in a way that's transcendent and doesn't become enclosed. Just like when light shines in the world. Light shines in the world, just goes all over. It doesn't make a difference if it's like shining in the place of a garbage or a beautiful palace or a big building or a small building. Nothing that goes on has any connection with the light. It's all transcendent. As opposed to the life force of the neshama that becomes enclosed in the body to give it life, that is an internalized way. In an internalized way, you need to make sure that the body is ready to receive the life force, and if the body is not healthy, chas v'sholom, so then there might be areas in the body where the life force doesn't affect or doesn't become manifest, and so on and so forth. Why? We explained the difference between koyach and oyer v'chayis. What is the cause of the difference between oyer and chayis? That oyer is makif and doesn't become down in a pnimistic islapshus, and chayis does. So it's also connected with the dveikus part. Just like we said, that the difference between koyach versus oyer v'chayis is that koyach is not connected to its source. That's why it can be concealed, the connection. Whereas Oyer Chayis is connected to its source, the same thing, in Oyer Chayis there are degrees of connection. So it says in the parentheses on line 8, because the revelation and the cleaving of the life force. 2, its source is not like the revelation and the cleaving of the light to its source, and because of that difference between them, because they're a different type of connection, therefore, the more it's connected to its source, the less it's enclosed, and the less it's removed from where it deals with. That's the oil, very much connected to its source. Chayis, even though it's connected, it's not such a powerful connection, because it's not such a powerful connection, so therefore, it can become enclosed in the plebeius of whatever it's giving chayis to. Line 9. So, but even then, even when it's enclosed, umikol mokim einem mishtana, still in all, it doesn't become changed. The kivin shagam chayis will bechinas gilu with vacants from kodesh, since also the life force and vitality is in a state of revelation and cleaving in its source. Therefore, also once enclosed in the creations, it doesn't become changed whatsoever in the process. And still in all, it is also, wherever it is, it's still giving and revealing and in such a way that's not impacted by the creations. Ois Hey in the Mimer, line 13. Achtzar Law, and the Rebbe asks about this. We need to understand in the godly life force that's in the creations, there is a fourth level. Bechinas Shem. There's the level of the name. So we spoke about Oir, we spoke about Chayis, we spoke about Koyach. The Rebbe introduces, seemingly there's another level we didn't really discuss. And that's the level of the name of every creation. It's known, the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov that's brought down in the Alter Rebbe's Sharich V'Amunah in Tanya, Hashem shall call the names of all the creations in this world. These are the very letters of speech that Hashem spoke in the 10 utterances of which He created everything in this world. But not everything in the world is actually clearly and openly listed in the 10 utterances in the creation, but all the letters of every single creation is to be found in the Asar Amodas through different exchanges of letters, through different combinations, etc., etc. So therefore, since the Asar Amodas is the life force and vitality, and all names of all items are derived and a combination and exchanges of all these different letters, so therefore every name has some type of energy that gives life to that particular thing that is called by that name. It's also known the teaching of the Mizritcher Magid and the Pasuk, who whatever Adam Arishan called any living creature, he called it by a certain name, that was his name. What does it mean that it's Hu Shmai? He should have said that Adam Arishan called it, and now they have a name. The indication of the wording in the pasuk is that Adam Arishan called it by their name that they had already. He called it and by the name that he had. What's it mean, the name that he had? Didn't Adam Arishan invent the names? So therefore, the Mizritcher Magid explains that those names that Adam Arishan called all the creations. Then he said this one is appropriate to call an ox, and this one's appropriate to call something else. These are the life forces of the things. In other words, they were really their names and their energies beforehand. Just Adam Arishan really revealed it. That's why we're saying Hu Shmai. That was he called it by the name that it really had. According to this, he explains the statement of Chazal, that the names that Adam Arishan called the different animals indicated his great wisdom. Hashem proved to the Malachim that Adam Arishan's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of Malachim, because when the Malachim said, "Who is Adam Arishan? Who is this person? Why do you go through all this effort, etc., etc.?" So he said, "Can you call the animals by the name?" No. And then he showed that Adam Arishan was able to call it. So if Adam Arishan's names were just arbitrary, it was no big chachma. Last line on the page, line 27. The reason why Adam Arishan was able to call them by their names, he knew and he comprehended and he knew the root of every single species, and therefore he was able to name it as such. And that was why he had such a great chachma. But if it was just arbitrary, he was just pulling up names out of thin air, that's not a big deal. So the Rebbe goes on to explain that explains over there in that Maimer, so too it's also concerning the names of people. Not just does the Mizritcher Magid say that this is concerning the names of species. This one is, like the Medrash says, appropriate to call an ox. This one's appropriate to call this animal, and so on. But also the individual names of people. Not only the name of man in general, the name of the species, which is man Adam, Elagam Hashemas Haprotim, but also the individual specific names of every person individually. That the individual name of every single person, that is his life force and vitality. The Rebbe says a very interesting point over here. I do not remember seeing this somewhere else. Just like this matter applies concerning the name of every single item, both the name of the species and also the name of the individual person that is called in Lashon Kodesh. It's not just Lashon Kodesh, even though in Shaykh Muna it says the expression Shmoi Asher Yichru Loi B'Lashon HaKodesh. So the Rebbe adds, it's not just limited to the Holy Tongue. So too, it's also concerning names in other languages. The Rebbe says, how come? In other words, some guy is called Jim or Michael, or you have some type of new invention that they don't have a name for it in Lashon Kodesh. So you call it whatever, a hard drive. You call it a hard drive, you call it a tablet. There's no word for that in Lashon Kodesh. So it gets its chayes from the English name for it. How come? Since all matters are by divine providence, like we find in the writings, in the books of my father, in other words, the Rebbe's father, Reb Leivik, in many, many places, he actually derives things from the names of certain things that are in not Jewish names, not in Lashon Kodesh. He derives from them new things and directives in the service of Hashem. And in the side commentary, he brings an example from his father was exiled to a city called in the Russian Asia called Chiali or something like that. And in Lashon Kodesh, it's written Tzadik Yud Aleph Lamed Yud. The Rebbe connected it to the idea of tzeil, of a shadow, and the whole idea of transforming the shadow into light, etc., etc. So we see from the Rebbe's father, the Rebbe says that a name, even if it's not in Lashon Kodesh, has the power of giving the energy and so on. So the Rebbe goes on to say in line 13, V'nimtza comes out, the divine life force that's in all creation. Concerning this, it says, you give life to all, shame is in the level of a name. We have to understand, how does this fit in what's explained in the continuation of the Amorim of the Friedrich Rebbe, that he gave out for Yud Shvat. That where it says that you give life to all, it goes on light and life. Seemingly, the life and energy comes not from the level of light, but comes from a fourth level. Not the level of light, not the level of chayis, not the level of koyach, as we said, but rather from the level of shame, from the level of a name. And the next paragraph, the Friedrich Rebbe is going to explain how the level of a name is the opposite of what we're trying to say about oyer being a revealed energy, whereas shame is a concealed energy. Page Lamed Daled, line 19. It's even more not understood according to what it's known. That these are two opposites. Light and even chayis are the opposite of a name. Chayis, a level of light, and so to life. It's the idea of revelation, like we mentioned before. Shame, as opposed to name, that's a level of concealment. And he's going to explain how one is revelation, one is concealment. The idea of revelation is primarily in light. Because light is similar and is close to and very much alike to the luminary. And through the light, one can comprehend the quality of the greatness of the luminary. Like the light of a candle, like the light of a torch, or the light of the moon, or the light of the sun. The difference between these different types of light, of the candle, of the torch, shows on the luminary. By looking at it, it says, oh, this, I can tell this is coming from a candle, from the quality, from the power of the light. I can tell this is a sunlight. I can tell this is moonlight. I can tell this is coming from the moon because I can see what type of light it is. Because the idea of light is revealing and similar to the luminary. As opposed to a name, through the name we cannot backtrack and figure out what is this person about. His name is Chaim. Now I know what he's about. No, there are many people are called by the same name. They still know they're not similar to each other, not intellectually, not in their other faculties. Even more so, not just is the name of the individual person not something that reveals something about the individual, but also the species name. Even the name of the species that shows more about the life force and vitality of that species is concealed. Like it's known what Hashem praised Adam Arishon in front of the Malachim, over the Malachim, top of page Lamed Hey, that he knew how to call them by name. Because only Adam Arishon recognized the root of the life force of every creation. If the name would shine as revealed as the light, what's the big deal? Why do we say he was such a wise person that he recognized? Nobody's going to be considered very wise when they could determine the difference between sunlight and moonlight, between torchlight and candlelight. It's not a big chachma. The fact that Adam Rishon was praised, that means because it's not evident, it's not open, it's not clear, even the name of the species and the connection with that particular species. So he says in line 3, from this, it is clear that the ray of godliness that's in the name, even in the name of the entire species, is concealed. Also, similarly, in the statement of Adam Rishon, after Adam Rishon called names to all the animals, so Hashem told Adam Rishon, and what am I? What name will you call me? So Adam Rishon concluded, L'cha na likris Adnai. You, it's appropriate to call the name Adnai, Sha'ata Adin l'chol b'riyasecha, because you are a master to all your creations. So one might think there's a relationship over here. So the name of Hashem is not like these other names that were concealment. So the Rebbe says no. It says in line 6, Hashem addressed Adam Rishon, and he asked Adam Rishon, now use your chachma just like you used it on all the other animals, and say what my name is. Why did he have to use his chachma? It's also lefish inyan zeh behelam, because this matter is concealed. Even the fact that Hashem is a master of all the creations is concealed. So on all levels of names, even the names of species, even the names of Hashem, the name is idea of concealment. So how does that fit in with the idea that we're saying va'atem achayes kulam, that there's a level of oir and revelation, when the chayes is coming through the name that's devolved from Nasarim Amaris, and that is concealment. So how is it concealed, revealed? So he says in line 8, we can answer that this is also what's brought down. I'm sorry, this is not yet the answer. This is still continuing in showing how things do not have the life force and energy revealed. So he says, this is also what's brought down in Tanya, in the name of the Arizal, even in inanimate things. like stones and rocks, etc. Yesh b'chinas nefesh v'chayis ruchnius. There's a spiritual soul and life force. Shekavanosei b'doimim mamish higam leb'chinas doimim beruchnius. His intention in something that's a doimim mamish doesn't mean only rocks, but means things that are spiritually inanimate, spiritually a doimim, spiritually things that do not indicate any type of vitality. What's the physical attribute and characteristic of a doimim, of an inanimate thing? You don't see any life to it. Even a plant, you see that it grows, there's life, there's energy, etc., etc. But when you're talking about an inanimate thing like a rock, you don't see life to it. The same thing, doimim in the spiritual thing, in the spiritual sense, means things that are spiritually not indicative of the godly life force. So the Rebbe goes on to say at the end of line 12, all created beings, the way they are on their own, without any interference, they show and reveal the godly life force. The creations themselves declare that there is a godly life force. Similar to what it's known, every creation sings praise to Hashem. That is indicating that where it's coming from. So what happened? Why do we not see it? Where is it concealed? Because the many concealments and coverings. Yes, there are creations that are inanimate in a spiritual sense. They do not reveal, they do not give voice to the godly life force that is within them. Considering this, he says, also in inanimate things, mamish, those creations that are in a way that's inanimate, there is a spiritual level of a soul and a life force. After the Alter Rebbe says that even those type, in other words, even those things that are doimim spiritually, they have a soul and they have a life force in them. And then he continues and says, what is their soul and their life force? That's the names that they got from the Asar HaMaris after many changes and so on. So that means to say, that means a name is concealed. So this is again emphasizing the idea that a name shows on concealment. That what does he explain later on, our chapter in Yudala, that what comes down to bring life and to bring things into existence is the godly life force, specifically light. It's a ray of light that's a revelation. Okay, move him. Maybe also like it's also understood from what he brings from Megaras HaKodesh chapter 20. That array of the light is in all creations and all formed beings and all made beings. And this is emphasized the idea of revelation. The fact that the kav brings things into being, something from nothing. Though the coming into being of something from nothing is only by the power of Hashem's essence. That only Hashem, whose being comes from himself, can create something that thinks that it comes from itself. So how can the kav do this if the creation is coming from Atzmus? Because the kav is a revelation of this power. Because the kav is from the infinite light of Hashem, and the light, as like we said before, it's similar to the luminary. That Hashem is its existence. His existence comes from itself, like it's explained over there in the Geras HaKodesh. Move on top of page Lamed Vav. From this is understood. Shagam ha'ora, the ora shalakav, also the ray and the ray of the line that Shebachal Nivraim Noitzim Renasim in all creations and all things that were formed and made. Shemachayu mahavois u'mayim yesh, that gives them life and brings them into being from nothing to something. He came amoyer, it's similar to the luminary inyan hagilui, the level of revelation. So again, this is all indicative of the idea that the life force that comes into all creations is a level of revelation, not a level of concealment like the name. Let's just conclude this paragraph. Moisav Levi Behem Shvai Lula continues, and he adds to explain in the Hem Shvai Lula, Sha'oy V'chayis Meir V'nimshach Gam B'madregas Hayos Tachtoin V'yisach Shvalim, also the light and the life force that shines and is drawn down, also the lowest, most levels. Like it says in Esach Shemaim Shamata Vatzia Shoeli Neka, if I spread out the heavens, there you are. I spread out even the grave, there you are as well. V'hainu Shagilu Achayis V'loy Rapa Shemaim. The revelation of the life force is not just in the heavens. Hashemayim Misapnim Poit Keil. The heavens are relating the glory of Hashem. Alagam Ba'aretz V'afilu B'shoel Achayis U'Begilu, also in the earth and also in the grave, the life is in a revealed way. Like he continues over there, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, it's in the capability of every single person, even the most simple, ordinary person, to know this, like we mentioned before. So therefore the question is, how does this fit with the idea that everything gets its highest from the level of the name, and the whole idea of a name is that the life force is concealed? So which is it? Is it a matter of concealment, or is it a matter of revelation? And we'll, Metz Hashem, conclude this Maimer on Monday.